Welcome everyone to the Laser channel. My name is Greg, and in this project video, I'm going to demonstrate how to do a large engraving that is much larger than my laser machine. I'll show you the simple steps in Lightburn software that opens up a lot of project possibilities. Stay tuned to find out just how easy this is. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me for another video on the Laser channel. Before I jump into Lightburn software, I want to let you know that I will have product links in the description down below. These are for your convenience, and feel free to bookmark those for future reference. Before I jump into the Lightburn software and we start jumping into just a couple details to create this project, here's an overview of how this method works. The graphic that I have is 13 inches tall, and that definitely fits within the workspace of the Ortur Laser Master 3. However, that graphic is going to be about 43 inches wide, and that definitely doesn't fit within the workspace. So, using the Lightburn software, I'm going to chop up that graphic or create several segments of that graphic so it does fit within the workspace. The second part of this is to align the segments to the previous segments. I'll be dropping some target indicators on those segments, and I'll show you what that all looks like within the software. If you're trying this method out at home or you're following along, I suggest using some of this poster board. I use this from the Dollar Tree, and the really cool thing is that it's white in the middle, so I don't have to cut all the way through it. I can just engrave the top surface and I'll see that white middle layer. And it's a quick, easy way to practice this method. Well, with that covered, let's meet up in Lightburn and I'll show you just a couple basic steps to get going with this method. I'm going to click once on my graphic, and we're going to come up to the top of the screen, and again, we're going to see that that height that I mentioned, it is 13 inches, and the width is actually 41 inches and change. But again, when I take this graphic and I place it over the Ortur Laser Master 3 work area, it just doesn't fit. Even if I had a machine that had an extension kit on it, usually those extension kits only go up to about 35 inches wide. And in this scenario, I would still need to chop up this image in order to complete the project. I'm going to move this back down here. So the first thing that I want to do is draw a box all the way around this graphic that I've got. And for that, I'll grab this one that I've already got. This box that I drew, it is going to be 15 inches tall, and that still fits within the constraints of the work area of my laser machine. I left a little bit of room on both sides. This box is drawn on a tool layer, and it's just for reference. The next thing that I need to do is I'm going to draw a workspace box that is going to be smaller than the work area of my machine. And this workspace box is going to become a segment in just a little bit. Here's what I mean by that. I have this box down here, and this box is 15 inches by 15 inches. I'm going to grab this top corner here, and I'm going to drag it to this other corner, and we're going to see the mouse cursor is going to change into a little bullseye. If it moves to like a flat line, it means that it'll overlay another line, but I want the intersection with the bullseye on it. That looks good, and actually I'm off just a little bit, so I'm going to get that placed directly on top. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other box and do the exact same thing. Again, this box is 15 by 15. I'm going to grab the corner and go up to this corner. This will create 3 segments. I'll cut out this first segment, this other segment, and it will leave this third one in the middle. Before I do that though, I want to have some reference targets, and these reference targets are going to be, once I cut out this first segment, the software is going to need a way to find an orientation to match up to the adjacent segments. And for that, I have these targets down here, and I'll show you how to draw that, because This is one of the key elements in this method. I'm going to draw a circle and hold down Shift so that it stays a perfect circle. And this can be made any size, but I like to use 0.5 inches. I'll zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to grab the pencil tool here, and at the very top, at one of the 4 quadrants, I'm going to look for my mouse cursor to change into that crosshairs again. And I'll hold the Shift down to draw a perfectly straight line. And again, moving my crosshair down until it becomes that nice little crosshair. And I'll do the same on the side here. In order for this to be a valid target, I need to highlight both of the lines and the circle, and I need to group those together so that they are a single entity. And for this project, I can just copy and paste a couple more copies of this until I've got 4 all together. I have those already, and that is on layer number 01. I'm going to take this and drag it up to the top here. I'll zoom in a little bit. I'm going to grab the very center of this object, and I'm going to move that until my cursor turns into that crosshairs. What I'm looking for is the intersection corner of this segment box. I'm going to do the same thing with the other 3 targets, placing them in each of the corners here. I have all 4 targets placed. I've got to do one more step here with these targets, and that is this big rectangle that I first drew and placed over the graphic. Everything needs to fit inside of that box, and right now I've got half the target hanging out. So I'm going to zoom in on this first target, highlight it. Using the arrow keys on the keyboard, I'm going to arrow down until this target is inside of that first box. I'll do this for the other 3 targets. Everything looks good, and now we can start cutting out the segments. For this, I'm going to highlight the graphic, and holding down the Shift key, I'm going to grab this first box. I'm then going to go over to Tools, Cut Shapes, and we'll see that the box disappeared, and it doesn't really look like anything happened. However, when I grab what was inside that first segment box, I have just this first part. So pretty cool. We've got the first segment already cut out. I'm going to hit Control Z so it places that back to the previous step. I'm going to do the same over here. I'll highlight the text again, press and hold the Shift, and click on the box. Again, Tools, and Cut Shapes. And now cut this far side out, leaving the middle as another segment. This is the first big step in creating multiple segments so that that huge graphic fits inside of the work area of the machine. All I need to do now is to highlight segment number 1, and pressing and holding the Shift key, I'm going to include the 2 targets on this first segment, and now I can drag that into the workspace. Let's get a better view of that. With all of those pieces still highlighted, I can come up here to this area on the toolbar, and I can move to the center of the page. This is now perfectly centered, and I can see that I've got a little bit of wiggle room all the way around my graphic and the targets. I can now save this as a separate file called segment number 1. Once I've got this segment saved, I'm going to hit Control Z, and this is going to back up steps within the Lightburn software. I'm going to do that until it moves that first segment and the targets back to where they originally were on our reference graphic down below. Next, I'm going to do segment number 2. Segment number 2 is going to need the targets from the first segment so it knows where it has to align to, and then I need to drop 2 more additional targets so it knows where to start the third segment. For that, I'll highlight the middle section of the graphic here, and then I'm going to press and hold the Shift, and I'm going to grab all 4 of these blue targets. And I can move those up to the work area, and again, hit to move to the center of the page. I could do that while I've got everything highlighted down here, but I just like to show you that that is everything that moves together up into the workspace. And again, I'm going to check the perimeter here and make sure that all my targets and the graphic are well within the workspace of my machine. This looks good, and I can save this as segment number 2. Once that's saved, you've guessed it, I'm going to Control Z until all those elements are back where they were originally on the graphic. For this third segment, it's going to be pretty easy because we know we need to select the graphic and the 2 reference targets. And from here, I'm going to just move to center of page. That's good. And again, when I zoom in, I can see that I have, of course, all this nice space as a safety buffer all the way around the graphic, and of course, save this as segment number 3. Just know that when you highlight things, the graphic and the targets, they've got to stay in the same relationship. I can't move the targets separate from the graphic. They have to move together. A little bit of time has passed, and that's because I've been spending time making sure that this first segment that I'm going to be engraving is properly aligned to my work material. Because this is an engraving and not a cutout, I'm not throwing away any of the extra material here like I would be if I was doing a cutout. So this is why it's so important to make sure that the laser machine is pointed in the correct direction with the material. What I mean by this is if I had my laser machine really crooked, and each segment that would engrave afterwards, it's going to go off in this direction here, and it's going to go off the work material. This is why I spent so much time putting some blue marker tape down on top of this work material so that the graphic I know is going to be at the correct start area on the material. Test targets are going to be a light engraving, but because this is a desktop, I don't want to engrave that directly onto the material, so for that, I came up with a handy workaround. I'm going to use some poster board, and again, this is Dollar Tree poster board that has the middle as white, so all I need to do is lightly mark the surface, and I have this high contrast black with white. Now, I did some test engraving off to the side to make sure that I had correct settings for this. But just to make double sure that I don't engrave through that material into this top material here, I took one of these aluminum black business cards and some double-sided tape, and I stuck this card to the underside, cut that out, and then I also placed some more double-sided tape, and I'm going to frame out just the targets, and I'm going to place these smaller pieces that I made earlier just over those target areas, making sure it doesn't overlap my engraving area. The first section is complete and things are looking great. This next step is I'm going to move the laser machine over, making sure that the work area overlaps the 2 targets from section number 1. Here's the section 1 engraving, and here's that upper target. And again, when I move this laser machine over, I want to make sure that that is included in the work area along with this other target that is hiding underneath part of the frame. There it is. With section 1 complete, I'm ready to move on to section 2 now that the laser machine has been moved over the correct area. In Lightburn, I have the section 2 loaded in, and the previous section that we worked on would be over here, and these are duplicate targets, and we're going to use these targets to align section number 2. We'll also see that there's 2 more targets, and those 2 targets are going to be used for aligning section number 3. Before I continue on, I'm going to navigate to the Move tab here. I want to make sure that this Fire button is on. If it's not, navigate to Edit, Device Settings, and here's the checkbox, Enable Laser Fire button. That'll turn this button on. I also want to make sure that the submenu just underneath it, laser on when framing, is also enabled. This looks good. I'll hit OK. And at any time, I can turn this fire button on, and it's going to turn on a low-level laser beam. It's not enough to engrave into anything, but it's enough so that we can see it. And we're going to need this for the next step, because we are going to be manually adjusting the position of the laser module by using these keys here within Lightburn, noting that my start from is in absolute coordinates. If at any time in this next process I bump or by hand I move the laser module, I'll have to restart this. The first step to align to this upper target in the corner right here is to manually move the laser module to that section. For that, I've changed my move distance to something that makes sense that I can quickly move the laser there. In the Lightburn software, I've inched the laser module directly over the center of that target. This is really important to make sure that it's exactly in the center. I can now highlight that target, being careful not to move it. I can navigate to Laser Tools, Print and Cut, and Set First Target Position. Now draws a red circle around that, associating the current laser position with that target. I'll zoom in on this lower target and I'll repeat the same process. I'll use the Lightburn software controls and I'll move the laser module directly over that bottom target. With the laser module over this lower second mark, I'll highlight this target, again being careful not to move it, and I'll go back to Laser Tools, Print and Cut. I'm going to set second target position, and I'll get a blue highlight around that. When I zoom back out, I can now go back to Laser Tools and Print and Cut one last time, and I'm going to align output to targets. When I do that, I have two green circles indicating that now the target here is all properly aligned. I'm now ready to do a test framing or hit the start button. Section 2 is complete and it's perfectly aligned to section number 1. I'm now ready to move the laser machine over to the third and final section, and I'll be back to show you again the setup for that. The laser has been moved to the third and final position. Inside Lightburn, I have the third segment loaded in, and just like segment number 2, I'll use the software in Lightburn to manually control the laser module until it's pointed at this upper target. I'll select that target, and using that Print and Cut, I'll tell Lightburn that is target number 1. With the laser over this upper target, I'll select it, navigate to Laser Tools, Print and Cut, and set first target position. Next, I'll move the laser over this position. With the laser over that position, I'll highlight it and tell it to set the second position. I'll zoom out here a little bit. And I will set align output to targets. I've got green circles around there, and I'm all set. We'll also note that under the laser status, it's ready, but now the Print and Cut text now appears, also assuring me that this is all set up correctly. I can now either frame this out to make sure that everything fits where it should be and that the laser module doesn't crash into anything, or I can just hit the start button. The third section is complete, and here is the engraving in its entirety. And the alignment of everything looks absolutely perfect. This is a pretty cool built-in feature into Lightburn, and a lot of people shy away from this because it can be a little bit intimidating when you think about everything all at once. But I've grouped together a couple key aspects that I call keys to success. This is going to look absolutely awesome when the client puts the top coat on. This is a pour over that he's got a nice swirl with it. And so I've got some denatured alcohol here. And because this surface is buffed a little bit, when I put that denatured alcohol on it, that is going to be roughly the look of the final finish. So you get all of that nice glimmer. If I go a little bit on the wood, if he does a light wood finish, that is going to look absolutely awesome. Now that you've learned how to do these super huge engravings, I'd love to hear in the comments down below what types of projects you would like to tackle using this method. As always, if you learned something from this video, if you liked it, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, or ringing that notification bell. Doing any number of those things really helps the channel out, but more so, it's a great way to connect content like this with great viewers like you. Until we meet again, learn, create, and share.